All right. Okay, there we go. Okay, I'll start again. I'm talking to Phil Herwood, who is the vicar at St. Luke's here in Frankston, who is coming up on 16 years of ministry in Frankston, but about 34 years in ministry around Victoria in different places.
Yeah.
Kyabram,
and little place called Avoca.
Avoca, I know it well, near
Started off
Maryborough.
in
Yep.
Bendigo.
In Bendigo,
Mm-hmm.
okay. All right, if you were to have a presidential address or if you were to write your own farewell speech, how would you describe the ministry? Give me a big idea. If you were saying to people, this has been a life that is worth living. This has been a life that I've lived with passion, which I think I know you well enough to say that. A life that I've enjoyed in ministry. You wouldn't do it for 34 years without enjoying it. Give me a sentence. Describe your ministry.
I think the two things in ministry that actually connect a little bit with what Jesus says is to love God and to love people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think in some respects that sums it up. You've got to love God. You've got to believe in what you're doing. You've got to believe in what God came to do and what He's revealed of Himself, what Jesus came to do. You've got to believe that that's of central importance for people's lives today.
Yep.
And the second point is, I think, to love people.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't like people, there's not much point doing it. It's a people.
Mm-hmm.
It's a people job. So you're surrounded by lots of different kinds of people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, when you came to Frankston, you started off with some fairly hard tragedy, didn't you?
Well, there were quite a lot of challenges in the first couple of years, particularly, probably. Obviously, coming to a new community and a different community and a well-established community, but one with challenges. But also on the personal level, our eldest son was became sick 6 weeks after we got here and was diagnosed with bone cancer. And so the first year involved treatments, severe treatments, chemo, radio, etc., which were unsuccessful, and he passed away 12 months after treatment began.
And how did that change you, and how did that change your ministry?
Well, it's hard to say exactly how it changed. Just it meant we had to drill down into actually what we believed. It wasn't just a surface belief. We had to actually believe the reality of what we talked about, the reality of resurrection. Far better, I said to my son, to live to 20 and share eternity with Jesus and to live to 80 and be destined elsewhere. So in many ways I think he was a winner, but from a personal level, a lot of grief involved with that.
Wow. Okay.
There's a lot of grief involved with that, and a lot of change that happens. It changes your family, it changes you, really. I think it does affect you. The way I've thought about it is that it's like, I suspect, if you had an arm chopped off, it would be very difficult for a period, but eventually you adjust to it. It would no longer be painful, but you still wouldn't have an arm. So in a sense, you're changed in an ongoing sense. But you may not. You adapted to that change, and you adjust to the change, and you go on making the best of life and looking positively into the future.
I've been involved with maybe a dozen churches intimately in my 30 years of pastoral ministry and in my 45 years of Christian life, and I would have to say that this church at St. Luke's is more engaged in evangelism than any other church I know.
Oh. Wow,
Churches
you think so?
talk about evangelism, churches have evangelistic seminars and get the occasional missionary in, but you guys do an awful lot of it. Now, I reckon you impacted over 1,000 people over this Christmas period with your Festival of Lights, your walk through on the Christmas walk and your Christmas Day services. Where does that come from? Where does that passion come from?
Good question. Hopefully it comes from a corporate desire that we want other people to share the good news. The Christian faith is good news. It's not about doing this, not doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Primarily, it's about relationship, and I think that the people who are involved in our church community do find that they have a positive relationship with God that they want to share with others. And I think that in their daily life they try and follow those two things I talked about, loving God and loving others.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that rubs off on people.
Mm.
So I think it does get back to people's walk with God and their faith in Him, and the fact that in their own lives they've experienced something of His goodness and they're wanting to share it.
So give me your Bible verse that describes your ministry. Give me that describes you. What's your favourite Bible verse?
I'm not sure whether it describes me or not, but a Bible verse that has always been foundational for me is John 14:6. Jesus says, "I am the way, the life and the truth. No one comes to the Father except by me." I think that's such a profound verse to me.
Okay. And finally, in your life as a Christian, tell me about the most inspiring Christian you've ever met. And I don't mean professionally paid Christian. I mean just any Christian that has really inspired you.
Well, there's actually quite a lot, I think, and I remember a lady back up in our rural parish who just a quiet, unassuming lady, and yet was such a godly lady, prayerful lady, who just got on with things, didn't have things easy, but got on with things. I find inspiration in the ordinary people
Mm-hmm.
in our church communities
Mm-hmm.
who are good-hearted people who live quiet but profound lives, making a difference where they are. You know? And some of them, have carried a lot in their lives, and they never get much acclaim or notice from a world's point of view, but I think from God's point of view, He knows very much who they are. So that's where I get inspiration from those ordinary, everyday people who are really faithful in living out
Mm-hmm.
their walk with Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And they're the ones that have inspired me over the years.
Excellent. Well, thanks for that. Thanks for sharing your time.
A
And
pleasure indeed.
Somewhere in the world, someone's going to be greatly blessed.
Yeah, I guess the thing that I've tried to make a mark of my ministry in a way is just the fact that the ministry belongs to the people, not to the pastor or the vicar or it's a whole church. So I'm very much like to see people empowered to fulfil whatever God is asking them to do. So that's the way.
Yeah.
That's my orientation
Okay.
in terms of the way I operate.
Okay. Thanks for that. If you
Is that all right?
yeah, well, if you're comfortable with me putting that up, that's fine.
Yeah, that's fine.